All right, let's get this started. Hello and welcome back to my tower defense development in GDevelop. Let's see what's on the agenda for today. If you followed along last night, we added the arcane tower and the ice tower. And so we made some progress there with the arcane bolts and the freezing bolts. Tonight I wanted to kind of explore some of the other areas, like for the moon tower, there's a black hole effect that will sort of suck in the enemy for a period of time before releasing them. And then also might even delve into the blood tower with some pretty cool degen effects. That will be new territory for me, but I have some ideas for it. And so, I'm just doing this raw and happy to have you along. So we're just going to see how it goes. So to get started, I'm just going to start setting up some events for the moon tower black hole effect. We already have a moon tower, so I'll pull that up. Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend so far. Getting recharged and ready for the week. I don't know if you have a regular work schedule Monday through Friday, or if you work on the weekends, but either way, I know it can be tiring. It's nice to recharge. So here's the current moon tower, and what it does is exactly what you see. And if I had placed that correctly, then whenever the enemies walk in the same location as those orbiting moons, they take damage. They actually take a lot of damage. So call in the enemies. Let's see if I can get some collision here. Yeah, right there. So the moons will do damage every act or every frame. So they're pretty OP. And then what I want to do tonight is add an effect where the tower itself kind of absorbs the nearby enemies within a radius. And so let's see if we can get that put into the game. I also need to destroy these orbiting moons whenever the tower itself is destroyed. So that is on the to-do list as well. I need to do some management here. I have some bugs I needed to explore. Let me remove those from the chat here, and then we'll revisit that later. All right, so scrolling down. Let's see, I've got some errors here. Set Boolean object variable action from set Boolean object variable extension is missing. Okay, well that's for the flame tower. I definitely need to get that corrected. So let's go ahead and add that to the list of things I need to do later. That was fast. That was fast. There we go. All right, scrolling down. Here we are. So for the moon tower, if the animation of the tower base is this animation, it's creating the moons in an elliptical orbit. We also need to do, seems like I should have done a repeat for each instance. Let me see. Yeah, looking back at this now, I probably should have done that up under here. So let me add a sub event. I'm going to change up some stuff, move some events down below. And then move this one up here. Yeah, so now if the animation of the tower base is our moon tower, it is going to create those moons. Let me scroll this up here. Let me check the tower itself, the tower base, and see the variables. I might need to create one here as a Boolean, check if it has the moons. This will be to check if it has the moons, and if it does not, then it will create them. So I could very well be breaking something that's already working, hopefully not, but this needs to happen. There we go, set that to true. All right, let's test that real quick. Okay, so it did put the moons out. That is good. And then there we go. We have a Boolean here to check if it has light. That was just to make sure that we could actually see the moons. I think that that worked correctly. And then from there, it would be a matter of animating. So I think that, let me actually try something here. If I add an event below, drag the condition and the Boolean here and disable those, will it actually still orbit around the tower? Okay, so that works just fine. So that is good. What I'm going to do next then is just add a new event below this. And let me do another variable on the tower base. And this will be, we didn't actually need the has moons. I'll leave that there for now. I'll do has black hole as a Boolean, of course. And I need an object for now, I'll just start with a black circle. I'll just open up the local pixel editor. Just drag a circle out here. And save that. Could even give it some sort of an effect, maybe like a some sort of weird glow. See what that looks like. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty black, right? Pretty hard to see. Now, if I put that under a tower, it should have other lights around it. Because it's black, but I, in a weird way, want it to be more visible too. But I think if it's near a tower, which has a light source of its own, it should pop a little bit. And I think adding that little sort of a indigo glow around it is a nice little touch, which I can play with later and tweak it. The size, we'll leave the size as it is as well. Let's just get it into the game functionally. So in this sub event, what I'm going to do is, excuse me, I'm going to check for the variable. To see if it is false. If it is false, I will then set it to true. And then I will also create an object. The black hole. And I'll create it at the position of the tower base. We will say tower base. I'm not totally sure here. Could be probably center X. In the Y position, we would say center Y, and then maybe like, I don't know, minus black hole dot height, which should be, I think, 90 at the moment. So it should be centered and then slightly up. Okay, so by default, this should just happen every time we have a moon tower. Let's see if it works. Okay, it created it. That is not very centered at all. And I know why. It's because I didn't set the center point of the black hole. I set it so the point of the black hole is the top left, which is 0, 0 for the sprite. So let me just change the point. Right here. I'll just drag that to the middle. What was that, 45, 45? Boom. Apply that. Now that should be working. It's definitely really giant, which is a bit problematic. So let's just scale that down a little bit. Let's try half. Okay. Anyone do anything exciting over the weekend? Probably a little bit quieter than the previous weekend if you shot fireworks. All right, so now we have the black hole right there in the center. Aesthetically, I don't know how I want to handle that, but I'm okay with it just existing for now, and then I'll fine-tune all of the art later on as I go, once I know that I like the function, the functionality at all. So what I wanted to do now is I need to create a radius. So I can do this on the black hole itself, I think, because later on I might choose to have the black hole move around, like maybe you can relocate it or shoot it out somewhere. So I think I'm going to do the variables on the black hole sprite. So the first one I'll do is, let me think, range as a number. And for now, I guess I'll say, let's just say 400. Maybe 300. And what I want for testing purposes, let me draw a line, or rather a circle. So, and I did this last night for my meteor tower, or actually for my arcane tower. So let me go to that, wherever it is. Man, I messed something up here. I don't know what it was. There we go. Now what I'll do is draw a circle on the screen just so I can see where the radius is. So what I'm going to do is draw at the black hole. Center X and center Y. A circle of radius black hole range, which is a radius of 300 pixels. And I'll just use this shape painter arcane tower. And let's test that. Okay, not seeing it. Let me check something here. Okay, I know why. So what I need to do is create a new event below. And this needs to actually be not a standard event. It needs to be a for each instance, or for each object. So for each instance of black hole, I will draw the circle. Okay, there we go. So that should be our radius. And now any enemies within that circle are going to be pulled in to the center. That's the goal. So I'll add another event below, a sub-event. And I will borrow some more from the arcane tower. Yeah, I know there was a GDevelop update, and I still need to download it, so that's probably what's triggering all of these warnings. So right here, this is what I'm going to copy. So what this tells me is if the number of enemy backers or enemies living on the scene is greater than 0, pick the one that's nearest to, in this case, the black hole. My gosh, I cannot even type tonight. There we go. And then on the black hole, I'm going to add a variable, 2 variables. It'll be nearest enemy X as a number. And then same thing for the Y. Which I may not need here, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So pick the nearest enemy, and then if the distance between that enemy and the black hole is below black hole range, we're not going to shoot at it like the arcane tower. But instead, we're going to change the position of that enemy. And this is where I'm probably going to run into some interesting behaviors. But we're going to test this out as we go. We're doing this raw. What we need to do then is, if the enemy is below the range, let me think. Trying to decide how I want to do this exactly, but I might need to, because I'm thinking about using a tween effect for the movement. And to do that, But or I guess rather, before I do that, I just want to test this maybe by simply changing the position of the enemy. To the center of the black hole. Okay, so now what I think is going to happen is it might try to move the enemy, but the enemy's also got a conflicting behavior because the enemy is constantly trying to move along its path. So let's see what happens whenever it enters this purple circle. Okay, so it did in fact move. Let me try that again and maybe pull up the debugger at the same time. Okay, so right now this front enemy is the one that will be the guinea pig here. Now that appears to be a small enemy, and that's the name of it. So let me find that over here in my inspectors. Right here. So now if I unpause, so it seems like none of them actually got sucked in there. So let's see what happens if we send in a different variety of enemies. And what do we have? I think I also need to add a variable to the black hole, and it will be the variable holding enemy as a Boolean. And then it will be if that variable is false, then it will actually hold an enemy. Set that to true. Okay, let's see if we get any better behavior out of it now. So it grabbed the first one and then it seemed to poof it. So if I pause this now, I wonder if there remain any enemies lingering in the background. Let me take a look here. Not seeing any, so that's good. Okay, so not sure why it destroyed the enemy. It might have been hit by a moon or something. Tell you what, let me disable those moons. They're not conducive to this test. How about that? All right, sending in the enemies. Let's see if one of them gets sucked into the black hole. That one did. And so I know what the issue here is. Because my enemies are in two parts, they have an unseen backer sprite, which is stuck to the particle emitter that we actually see. I think I need to bring in both of those. So what I'm going to do is add a condition to check for the enemy that is stuck to that backing sprite. Then we'll also do the same thing with that one. Let's see if that does anything for us. That does nothing for us. All right. Lovely. So then let me dig into this a bit. We need to find the enemy that's actually stuck and then change the position of both. I need to go back up and figure out if the backer is stuck to the enemy or vice versa. So that would happen upon enemy creation up above. And if you're just joining us, what we're doing tonight is working on a black hole tower for this tower defense that will temporarily suck in nearby enemies, which will then damage them. And if they survive, it will release them. And the idea is for this to be a high damage, single target type of attack, which is also a bit of a crowd control as well. So going up to where the enemies are created, right about here. What do we have under the hood? So the backing sprite is then stuck to the enemy itself, the particles emitter. So that is what we need to work with. So this is backwards then. If the backer sprite is stuck to the enemy, all right, let's see what kind of bugs we get with that. Interesting that adding the sub event, I get less activity out of this. Whereas before, I would sometimes get the enemy to relocate, but it would be split apart. So let me check, let me log a message to the console. So right here, what happened was it activated when this first enemy came within range, but it moved the underlying sprite to the correct location of the black hole, but then it's still moving because the enemy itself is still moving. So I need to A, disable the enemy pathfinding behavior, and then B, make sure that the enemy itself, which is actually a particles emitter, is also moved with that backing sprite. So that seems like a two-step process. A little more tea. So what I need to do is review the pathfinding behavior for the enemy. So it is a pathfinding behavior. It's simply moving the enemy to a position. So perhaps what I could do is change the speed. Although that, I even have a condition here, even if the speed is 0, it should still move. So let me see where this is. Enemy movement and death. Go back down to the moon tower. All right, let me try something else. I will instead of checking for the enemy backer, I'll check for the enemy itself. And if that distance is within range, then do all the same stuff. And then if pathfinding behavior is activated, I can try deactivating it. All right, let's see what happens if we throw that wrench into the mix. So I think that it worked. I see a 2 here, which would have been the health of that enemy, and it's just sitting there. So well, let's test that again. And now I'm thinking next step, because if that works, then I'm good with that. Let's try it a couple more times. Yeah, see, it's just sitting there. So that's good. And then what should happen is it will release the thing after a fixed number of seconds. So for example, sucks it in, maybe it's a timer of like 3 seconds, probably a number that could be upgraded as you move along through the game. You could upgrade it to hold it for 4, 5, 6 seconds or whatever, which could be pretty beneficial if you've got like a big enemy, really hard to kill, moving through the scene, and it gets grabbed by this black hole. But we do need to be able to release it. So let's do a timer. And so whenever this happens, we will do an object timer on the black hole. Timer, object timer. On the black hole, we'll call it just, I guess, black hole timer. Let's set that to 3 seconds. So if the timer is greater than that, do the thing. And then we'll need to start or reset it. There it is. And we'll need to do that whenever the black hole is created as well. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll start the timer here, but the condition doesn't need to occur when it absorbs an enemy. It needs to occur after it's absorbed an enemy. So let me drag that condition down to a sub-event. Actually, probably not a sub-event of that one. It will be a sub-event of repeat for each instance of the black hole itself, if that makes any sense at all. So it would go down here. So if the timer is greater than 3 seconds, then we would start or reset the timer again. And I would need to release the enemy back out onto the path somehow as well. But first of all, we would need to activate the behavior of pathfinding on the enemies. Which I still need to get them moved to the actual path. Right now they might just be stuck, or they'll move from the black hole toward the tower, toward the base. Okay, so it seemed to die, which is weird because I didn't tell it to do any kind of damage at all. So let's see here. Actually, let me run that again and see if it actually deleted, but I'll keep the inspector open. Send in the enemies and refresh the tab over here. There we go. It got moved over here. 3 seconds, and it seems to be gone. Let's see what happens when all of these reach the end here, and especially that guy right there. Scroll down, that should be an enemy small. Which there are none left. So whatever I'm doing, it's actually killing the enemy, which sounds nice, but that's not the intent. because I haven't told it to do any kind of damage. So whenever the 3 seconds ends, it kills the enemy that it's holding. Yeah, because I'm reactivating the pathfinding behavior right here. So what I could do is move the position. I have a spawn point for every level. And what I'm thinking is, instead of spitting the enemy back out onto the path closest to the black hole, why don't we just send the enemy back to the start? And let me see what I named that. That should be... Well, I have a couple of spawn points. Basic. All right. Yeah, I think I'll do that. And let's see if that does not kill the enemy automatically. That's the goal, at least. Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend so far. I know it's been pretty hot over here, but I can't complain. We have power, we have AC, and I know Houston's having a lot more problems than us. Right here, move. The position. Oops. Set the X position to enemy spawner basic dot X, and then same thing for the Y. And it will then activate the pathfinding behavior. And let's give that a shot. Oops, don't pause, send. Here we go. So it's going to grab that first guy, boom. And I want to also have it grab, if it's not currently holding something, it should grab the next enemy as well. So with that being the case, I think right here is where I change the variable. It's a Boolean, holding enemy would be set to false. This should allow it to grab the next enemy after it spits out the first one. And I will keep the debugger open. Okay, I got that guy. And what is going on here? We have the one enemy and the others disappeared. They should not be dying there. Interesting. I wonder if it's deactivating the pathfinding behavior of everything in range. Let me scroll down, see how many enemies we have left on the scene. That was really weird. I just saw one of the enemies up here, and it created a new path which starts right here. And it seemed to vanish, but that little pathfinding painter is moving a bit. It's like a ghost. So we have one medium guy. And a couple of things that seem to be stuck here behind the tower. Alright, so what I'm thinking is I need to figure out, perhaps on each enemy, put a variable to check for basically a collision with the black hole. I'm going to actually set the black hole itself to transparent so I can see through it. The opacity, we'll set that to like 0. We know that it's there. So yeah, I mean, it got the first guy. If I scroll down, we see that there are actually 2 medium enemies on the scene. Their location. They're at the same location, which seems to be the black hole. In fact, if I hover over that, yeah, it's about 760, 360. So it's grabbing up at least 2 of them at a time. I wonder if that number changes depending on which enemies are spawning. Let me run a test on that. So it took 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so all 3 of them are there. It's not killing them. It's a little inconsistent, a little hard to track this one down, but let's see. Let's give it another shot here. See what kind of behavior we get. Took the first one. And the third one. So, all right. Let's just go back over the events then and check the logic. I think what I will do Well, never mind. For each instance of the black hole, we're drawing the circle to see the range or the radius. Obviously, if we have enemies on the scene, then we're picking the enemy that is nearest to the black hole center. This could be the issue here, is I was checking for the enemy backer rather than the enemy particle emitter. Let me change that. This might help a little bit. That almost seemed to work, but not quite. So let's test that again, see what happens. First guy, he got sucked in, 3 seconds passes. He got moved and the other one got sucked in. Is he gonna move? No. Now he did. It seems to be holding them too long. So let me check the event that is dictating how it holds involving the timer. So for each instance of the black hole, if the timer of the black hole is greater than or equal to 3, then start or reset that timer, and then change the position of enemies. Oh, yeah, so that is a bit of a problem too, because I had that as a sub event, but then I removed it as a sub event, so it doesn't necessarily know which enemy to move, and I think that's problematic. So let me think of how I want to do this. We can do a variable on the enemies. So let me scroll back up. Actually, don't need to scroll up. I need to go out here to my my objects. Variables. And I'll just do a variable called in black hole and apply. That'll be false by default. And I'll just go down my list here and do that. Anyone playing any interesting games lately? I've been wanting to play some Path of Exile, but every time I do, I get really sucked into it, and I end up spending more time than I would prefer. So I've been avoiding it this season. Almost done here. All right, I think that will do. So next what I'm going to do is scroll back down. And then if the timer of the black hole is greater than or equal to 3 seconds, if the variable in black hole of the enemies is true, then we will set that back to false after we move it to the beginning of the path. So what that means is we need to set the variable to true once it is absorbed by the black hole. So I'll just copy that and paste it up here. And let's give that a test. It seems to get stuck on these big guys. What's up with that? The black hole is getting stuck on the big guys. So there goes the one. Spits in back out. There goes the other. He's outside of the range. This should only be 3 seconds. Tell you what, let me do that again. Let me check the variable of the enemies on the scene. Send them in. And pause. All right. So we've got one of them already inside the black hole. Which should be this one right here, number 157. His variables are in black hole is set to true. The other one is set to false. And the big guy does he even have the variable? Wait, no, these are the oh, that's the enemy backer. He should not, that should not have the variable, but what should is enemy basic large right here. And it is also set to false. Now let me unpause it and we'll see what changes here. Refresh. Big guy is false. First guy is still true, other guy is still false. Now something switched here. So 157 is false, the other guy is true, and the big guy is still false. There was another switch. Refresh that. The big guy is still false, which makes sense because he's over here. 157 is true, and the other guy is false. Refresh that. Now we only have 2 enemies on the scene. Let's see if anything changes here. So it should be spitting this guy out and sucking in the that guy right there. But it's not. And we're down to 1. Looking at the black hole instance variables, we've got it's true that it's holding the enemy. Let's check its timer. It's set to 2.3 seconds right there. 2.6. So the timer is cycling. I'm wondering if the issue is that before it actually relocates the enemy, it's then checking for the next nearest enemy, and it's selecting the same one because it is the nearest. So let me close that preview and pull this back up. So if the distance between the enemy and the black hole is within range, and the Boolean value of the black hole is false, set the Boolean of the black hole to true, move the enemy to the black hole, and set the Boolean value of the enemy to true. I guess right here I could do another check for the Boolean value of the enemies as being false. Let me see if that helps. It started off strong and then it got stuck again. So let me look at the debugger here, check the values of the black hole. It is marking true as holding an enemy. And if I unpause that, it looks like it just swapped the enemies. Let's refresh. Very interesting. Because what we want to happen is it'll basically, for any enemies within range, every 3 seconds it'll kind of cycle through them. It seems to be replacing the enemies along the path here, but the intention is to put them back at the beginning of the path. I have a note out here for the spawning, but it's putting them back out onto the path, which is one unintended behavior. So now it's kind of like they're going to switch, if it switches at all. What happens if I call in more? There, did another switch. But it's not putting them at the beginning, which is really odd. Check my audio levels here. Hopefully you can hear the music all right. It's not drowning anything out too much. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get through it. This will be one of the stronger effects in the game. Just looking over my events here, making sure there's, well, I'm looking for any flaw in the logic. So we're checking for the enemy that's closest to the black hole, checking the actual distance in pixels, checking a couple of Boolean conditions. So if I pull that up again, I did make one small change. I don't think it's going to fix the bug exactly, but let's see if we can figure out exactly what's happening here. Whenever the first enemy arrives, it hits the range, it moves to the middle. 3 seconds should go by. The second one got pulled in. Now it's keeping a... Let's check if it's keeping an enemy here, because it kept a path that it was drawing toward the base. Okay, so right here we have 3 enemies. Two of them are in the black hole at this 830, 176 coordinate. The other one... Wait. No, 830 must be this one. So I guess there are 2 of them over here, and then there's one in the black hole. So... yeah. So the variables are accurate. They are reflecting where they should be. The black hole itself is telling me that it is holding an enemy. And there we go, it just swapped out the enemy and it put it back at this point. So if I refresh this, go back up here. Then enemy number 151 is true for the black hole, so that's the one sitting there. Then this guy is at coordinate 921, 453, and his value for the Boolean is false, and the other one is also false. So that's correct. But it's swapping them out for the location on the path rather than relocating them at the spawn point, which should be out here toward the beginning of the path. So what I want to do is figure out why. This is the line of code that should move it, change the position of enemies to the spawner basic X and Y. So that action is correct. It's written correctly. If the Boolean value of the variable in black hole of the object enemies is true, then it should change the position to the spawner basic. And then activate the pathfinding behavior of the enemy. So weird. I'm sure it's like as simple as moving one of these either conditions or actions to a different event line. I just need to figure out which one. So do we need the timer condition on the same event line as this Boolean check on the enemy? Let me also check that the spawner itself is not actually moving. It shouldn't. But as this moves along, let me just make sure for sanity's sake. Okay, so that guy got absorbed. Now if I come over here to my inspector, I'm looking for spawn point. I think it's called spawn point basic. And I wish there was a way to actually search through this, but I don't know of a way. Oh yeah, enemy spawner basic. So there it is. That is at X position 260, Y position 775. And it does not seem to be changing. Okay, let's close that. So the goal here tonight is to get through a couple of these tower types. So right now we have the moon orbits around this particular tower, and what we're working on is the black hole behavior. And what I would like to do is be able to move on to another tower type as well, possibly the blood tower. But obviously I've got to get through this bug. If it takes me too long, I might just move on anyway. Applying the damage to the enemies should be pretty straightforward. Once they're sitting there in the black hole, they're going to take probably a damage over time. And I haven't had any issues with applying damage. It's the position that's giving me the trouble here. So hopefully I can figure this one out pretty quickly and get a move on. Really, this should be a pretty formidable tower, because if we keep in the orbiting moons, right now it's going to be a combination of these orbiting moons as well as the black hole, which right now is transparent. So it's going to suck in an enemy as well as have these physical damage orbs that will smite the enemies as they come along. They're not in range in this particular case, but that'll be the idea. Are there any tower defense games that are your favorite to play? I played a lot in my time, but I figured I'd take a swing at making one myself. Some people like those fortress defense style as well, which can be pretty fun. All right, I'm a little bit at a loss for this particular issue right now. What if we hard code a coordinate? Let's say 450, 690. Sometimes the best way to solve a bug is to step away from it, which means we may just move on anyway. Oh, let me disable those. I don't want the moons killing the enemy while I troubleshoot. Here we go. Let's see if hard coding changes anything at all. So that does actually give me some information. I don't know if you can see it in time, but it is actually going to the spawn location, and then it's immediately jumping back to the pathfinding location that it left from. So that's interesting. I did not know it would do that, but now I know that it is in fact accurately moving to the spawn point and then immediately jumping back to its previous pathfinding location. So that gives me some ideas for how to approach solving the problem. So this is working as intended. And then when I activate the pathfinding behavior, that's where we run into the issue. So if I disable the pathfinding behavior, are they just going to move to the spawn point and then sit there? Yes, it would appear so. Okay, that's good. I'm just going to try a couple of things here, see if the pathfinding behavior will play nicely. No, it's still moving them around. So what I'm looking for here is anything within the pathfinding configuration that I can adjust that might assist with this issue. Yeah, a little bit of a loss here. What I'm trying to do is fix the pathfinding behavior of the enemies. Once this black hole absorbs them in, what should happen is they get replaced down here at the beginning of the path and then continue to move back toward the base. What seems to be happening is they're immediately being placed down here and then they're resuming their previous location on the path almost instantly. Although this seems better actually. We might have found a workaround. So it keeps calculating the nearest enemy within this radius, pulling it in and spitting out the other one to this spot down here. And I think we're actually good there. Let's pull in more enemies and see what happens. And what happens if we add in another tower? It seems to only allow one tower at a time to hold the enemies. Which means that it's going to cycle through them faster than it should. I think what I'll do though, because that's mostly right, other than the fact that they're kind of overriding each other's timer. So let me go up to the enemies and we're going to apply some damage. Really need to update my GDevelop because it does not like the latest update. Right here. All right, so what we'll do here is if the enemies are in the black hole, add a sub event. And we're going to check if the backing sprite is stuck to the enemies. Sounds kind of funny saying it out loud. It's just the way I programmed it. Then we will apply damage. And the damage cannot be reduced by anything. So this should be a lot of damage because it's going to be instant. But if it works, then I'll add a timer in. Yeah, so that actually presents an issue. If the enemy is destroyed, then one of the black hole variables is not able to update. So if I select the tower, send in the enemies, refresh, go down to the black hole over here in my inspector. Alright, so the black hole boolean of holding enemy is set to false. Now it's set to true, but that enemy died. Refresh it again. It's still true. Still true. So that variable is not getting updated, which is a problem. So I'm going to try to split out the event line where I reset the timer and change the black hole variable to false. So every 3 seconds it should by default just change that automatically, regardless of the enemy. So even if it dies every 3 seconds, it should still repeat. All right, that is a success. It is working. So we can... I'm going to stop drawing the pink circle. I think we're good on that. Disable that line. And then going back to having multiple towers, I'd like to double check it again. Yeah, it's probably less obvious if it's killing them that fast, but it's definitely effective. So I'm going to make a note to myself. I'm going to pull up my bug bounty text here. Not sure why it's so giant. I'm just going to add moon tower, multi-moon tower timers, something like that. So I will be revisiting that. And then so I have a little bit of work left to do. Let me re-enable the, or rather, yeah, re-enable the opacity on the black hole itself. Right here, set that to maybe, I don't know, 175. What does that look like? Maybe change the scale. I don't even know. What I want for that. I mean, it's really just kind of a circle at this point. That was the wrong one. Let's see, can we add any cool effects to it? Oops. Or rather, any more effects? Could add some sort of a pinch to it. And see what in the world that looks like. Oh, that does not look good. A little hard to tell what is going on because it's mostly black. Now, just a little curious, if I add some lines in here, can we see the effect? Yeah, I'm gonna have to play around with that. I'm not satisfied with that effect at all. Let's see if a blur would have any effect on it. And just adding some effects to the black hole here. Yeah, that actually is kind of a nice touch. It makes it a little bit soft on the edges here. So, you know, that's not necessarily the final art, but it'll definitely get the point across. So now if we actually open up a tower, yeah, we get a black hole there. So although I think I want to change one thing. This is a bit too purpley. Let's darken it. and test that. That'll work. I do need to add a timer though, so it doesn't immediately destroy every enemy it pulls in. So going back up to where the enemy takes the damage. We'll need a timer, so we'll do object timer value Actually, let me look at something right here. This would be the black hole damage timer. I don't know, we'll say every 0.5 seconds. So it'll still be pretty strong. And then we'll need to start or reset the timer. And I'll need to do the same thing whenever they are created. Actually, I'm going to change the naming convention. I'll call it timer enemy backers. That. So let me copy that and add it to each time the enemy is created. And then copy that and change the name down here. All right, that should work. And let's give that a test. It should now take 2 damage every half second. Which, if their total health is 2, then it's going to be a very short test. But there we go, we can see it's being pulled in. It takes a whole second to kill it. Boom. Perfect. All right. Well, that is pretty successful for the Moon Tower black hole effect, or ability, or whatever you want to call it. I'll obviously play around with the overall look because I think it could look really awesome. But as a starting point, this gets us to where we want to be. It will pull in the enemies. It will then poop them back out here toward the spawn point, which actually reminds me I do need to change the spawn point to the actual out of the border location. So next up, I'll probably be working on some of these other towers that I mentioned. So we can now pretty confidently cross this one off in terms of getting the black hole into the game. And next would be, I had this full moon ability. So definitely tune in next time to see what that is. And the reason I'm not telling you has nothing to do with the fact that I forgot. So we're going to find out together. And I also am really excited to get into this blood tower and do some dark pact abilities. Do a life degen beam to the enemy and swap your own light currency for damage, that kind of thing. Damage increasing in scale as the degen beam, like the longer that the degen beam is on the enemy, things like that. So really excited to move forward into those towers. I'm happy to get these onto the scene, and yeah, I guess that's about it. So definitely thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, if you're interested in following along with these live streams, be sure to hit that notification bell in addition to subscribing. That way you get the notification whenever I schedule a live stream, and you can obviously watch along. And if you have any suggestions with the game, I'd be happy to see if I can implement them. I don't know everything, so I'm always open to ideas and collaboration if you have any questions and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess that brings us up to a wrap. So thanks so much for watching. I'm going to get ready for the week ahead, and I hope you have a great week yourself. And until next time, I hope you have fewer bugs than I do. Thanks.